As we've come to understand from Luxemburg, Rodney, Prebisch, and W.E.B. Du Bois,
capitalism is the driving force behind nearly all colonial projects around the world.
Coming from a desire to expand into new markets to extract more capital, these projects have been inherently violent,
with colonized peoples facing oppressive governance,
physical and cultural harm,
and even genocide.
Capitalism thrives off of the dehumanization of people and places. This can be seen today as easily as the borders drawn across continents to break up land and maintain a monopoly of violence in order to secure means of capital extraction, remnants of colonialism as necessary for capitalism. Nearly everything in our globalized world can be traced back to this process. In Rodney's text, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, we begin to see why the decolonization of Africa after World War II had an extremely limited effect on the material conditions of the people.
Capitalism has prolonged the effects of colonialism in post-colonial countries, which may have been able to develop if given the opportunity.
Colonialism has prolonged the lifespan of capitalism by providing it with new frontiers for exploitation. Although the colonizers technically withdrew from power, they often stayed in the countries they had colonized because they still owned the land.
Because of this, the economic systems formed under colonial rule did not end with colonialism, but instead were maintained and protected, ensuring the continued exploitation of land and labor in Africa to today.
BCB students, the leftists, the anarchists, socialists,
they all come from all over the world and often share a disdain for our current capitalist systems that guide contemporary policy on politics and economics. We want to see what BCB students living in Berlin think about capitalism both here and in their home context.
How do they understand the functioning of these systems, the impacts across all areas of life,
and their own role within capitalist or colonial systems.
So I come from two colonizing countries. I'm originally from France, and then I've lived in the US most of my life.
I grew up and lived all of my life before coming to Berlin in a settler colony in the United States.
France is like an old country, classic colonization.
My time at BCB has informed me of different ways in which I can analyze or critique or understand the social relations, the capitalist dynamics of how settler colonialism and capitalism are like systems that are tied together.
And the US is kind of a like new form of colonialism where a lot of it was like concealed or done through politics, or it's like territories but not colonies. So they're different ways, but they're both based in that colonialism.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely always bound to each other. I think it's most obvious with the United States only because the way that the United States operates is by extracting resources from the external countries. And I mean, that's how all, countries in the global north operate.
I think you could have had small-scale capitalism without colonialism, but you could not have had colonialism without capitalism.
I mean, I would say they're like extremely interlinked because capitalism like inherently relies on this kind of hierarchy of labor outsourcing. So, you need to outsource that.
Within a capitalist system, if you always have theory or value of growing and extracting and like never-ending growth, there's nothing that's stopping the logic from turning that into colonialism.
Oh, and you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say the Humboldt Forum. Oh my god. Because the Humboldt Forum is not only a sort of like, okay, and to use Marx's language, like a primitive accumulation of cultural capital, of cultural belongings from former colonies or former colonies of like colonial allies that Germany has had. How capitalism in Germany specifically still benefits from colonial relations that it has to its former colonies or like neo-colonies.
First thought that comes to my mind is like of Potsdamer Platz, because I feel like that just the place reeks of capitalism and like these foreign companies setting up like businesses in Berlin, but like also like just like doesn't feel like Berlin to me that much. Like I'll go to Potsdamer Platz and like this, like I know it is Berlin, but at the same time it just looks like it could just be like another financial city.
I think I really see colonialism in my everyday life when I go to like the grocery store. I've been like trying to make a map in my mind of like where all the food comes from, and every once in a while I'll get like a fruit or something and it'll say like, oh, this is from Ecuador. Obviously I'm benefiting from that, is that if I'm able to eat these tropical foods in December.
In terms of capitalism for Berlin, I think it's the most present in the housing market, especially also just because of the history of Berlin. It has such a strong anti-capitalist heritage post the Cold War and post the Wall. And I think capitalism is kind of catching up here in a different way than it has in Sweden. So whereas we have been like growing with capitalism for the past 100 years, Berlin is only just now, I feel like, catching up. And hence I also feel like there's a lot more resistance against it here versus than in Sweden.
It seems to me that BCB students are surprisingly well versed in the unfortunate relationship between capitalism and colonialism, even the ones who haven't taken OPE and therefore have only suffered lightly at the hands of theoretical readings. With all of this knowledge about capitalism and its colonial ties, I can't help but wondering, what do these BCB students actually do to limit their involvement in these systems? Do they boycott fast fashion? Do they grow suspiciously large amounts of basil on their windowsill? Do they dream of new systems and modes of representation and production that could get around wealth creation that doesn't require someone somewhere being spectacularly exploited? We've seen examples of domestic replacement theory and attempts to break dependence on international markets, Argentina being a rather dramatic example, and yet we still haven't stumbled upon the magical, foolproof method that will actually solve this problem. At this point, it feels like we're circling the world's most stubborn group project. Everybody knows what's wrong, everybody has an opinion, and somehow the solution remains eternally in progress.
Honestly, just like a fucking core class, like, whatever, bro.